Everybody talks about generations. Boomers get blamed for everything. Millennials get analyzed to death. Gen Z gets treated like a social experiment. But there's one generation almost nobody talks about. The generation in between. The one that quietly shaped the modern world. And then stepped back. Generation X. And psychologically? They might be the most uniquely wired generation alive. Because Gen X didn't grow up in comfort. They grew up in transition. And that changes the brain. Number 1. The childhood of independence. Imagine being 9 years old. School ends. You walk home alone. Open the front door. And the house is empty. No parents. No text messages. No location sharing. No cameras. Just silence. For millions of Gen X kids, that was normal. They became what society later called latchkey kids. But psychology tells us something important. When children spend large amounts of time managing themselves, they develop independence earlier than expected. Not because they're stronger. Because they have to be. Gen X learned early. Solve your own problems. Handle your own emotions. Figure it out. That kind of childhood creates competence. But it also creates emotional distance. Because when nobody's around to rescue you, your brain stops expecting rescue. Number 2. They learn consequences fast. Gen X grew up in a different parenting culture. Rules were rules. And consequences were immediate. No long discussions. No emotional processing. No, how does that make you feel? If you messed up, you knew. Fast. Psychologists call this high-consequence conditioning. When actions produce immediate outcomes, the brain becomes highly predictive. That's why many Gen X adults naturally think ahead. They anticipate problems. They prepare for worst-case scenarios. Not because they're negative. Because their brains were trained that way. Number 3. They stopped trusting systems early. Gen X watched adults preach stability. Then watched stability collapse. They saw rising divorce. Corporate layoffs. Economic uncertainty. Promises breaking. They heard. Work hard and everything will be okay. But reality showed them something else. Sometimes you do everything right. And still lose. Psychology calls this adaptive skepticism. A mindset built from repeated unpredictability. It's why Gen X often sounds realistic. Sometimes harshly realistic. They don't expect guarantees. Because life didn't give them any. Number 4. Privacy became protection. Gen X grew up before digital life. Before social media. Before public everything. Your mistakes stayed local. Your embarrassing moments disappeared. Your private life stayed private. That shaped their psychology deeply. To many Gen X adults, sharing everything online feels unnatural. Not because they're bad with technology. Many helped build modern tech. But because privacy feels like safety. And exposure feels like risk. For them, being unknown feels powerful. Number 5. Humor became emotional armor. If you look at Gen X culture, it's full of sarcasm, dry humor, irony, detachment. That wasn't random. Psychologists often view humor as a defense mechanism. A way to create emotional distance from pain. Gen X grew up during Cold War anxiety, economic instability, and cultural uncertainty. They were surrounded by tension, but often told everything was fine. That contradiction creates a unique coping style. Laugh first. Feel later. Or maybe, don't feel it at all. Number 6. Their work ethic is different. Gen X doesn't usually announce hard work. They just do it. Quietly. Consistently. Many started working young. Paper routes. Retail jobs. Restaurants. Manual work. Not for experience. For survival. For money. For responsibility. And that changes your relationship with work. To Gen X, work isn't identity. It's necessity. And competence matters more than recognition. That's why they often value skill over status. Titles don't impress them. Ability does. Number 7. They respect competence, not authority. This is one of the strongest Gen X traits. They don't automatically trust authority. You have to earn it. Why? Because they grew up watching institutions fail. Political scandals. Corporate scandals. Public mistrust. They learn something powerful. A title doesn't equal wisdom. So if you're capable, they respect you. If you're incompetent, position means nothing. That mindset still shapes how they work, lead, and parent. Number 8. Self-reliance became identity. Here's the hidden cost. Gen X is extremely self-sufficient. But sometimes too self-sufficient. They struggle asking for help. Not because help isn't available. Because depending on others feels uncomfortable. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Self-reliance became survival. And survival became identity. That makes them incredibly strong in crises. But often isolated in pain. Number 9. They learn patience in a way newer generations didn't. Before Google, answers took effort. You searched. Waited. Read. Practiced. Failed. Tried again. Gen X learned patience because information had friction. And effort changes memory. Psychologists know this. The harder knowledge is to acquire, the deeper it sticks. That's why many Gen X adults are practical problem solvers. They trust process, not shortcuts. Number 10. They're the bridge generation. Gen X lived in two worlds. The analog world and the digital world. They remember life before the internet and adapted to life after it. That makes them different. They understand silence, boredom, patience, privacy, but also technology, adaptation, change. They're the bridge between old systems and new ones. And bridges rarely get celebrated. They just carry weight. Quietly. Without asking for applause. And maybe that's the perfect way to describe Generation X. Not loud. Not flashy. Just resilient. Built in silence. Tested by change. And shaped by a world that taught them early. Nobody's coming. So figure it out. If this made you understand Generation X differently, subscribe my channel Why We Do It, and do not forget to press the bell button and leave your comments if you agree with my video. Because psychology explains people in ways most of us never notice. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.